I'm Mathew Kerbis, the subscription attorney, and this is Law Subscribed, your dedicated source for all things subscriptions and the law. Thank you to my sponsors. See links to them in the show notes. Everything discussed is only for educational and entertainment purposes. Enjoy the show. Welcome back. If you thought that Lauren and I had fun talking about technology, and we did, now's the time for us to have our real fun, because we're talking about law firm business models. We're talking about how do you even price legal services in this tech-powered, AI-efficient world that we're living in. I mean, and we're not recording these too far in advance, just a few months in advance. But with every single month, with exponential growth, this tech is getting better and better and better. And if you're listening to this, you're probably already adopting it or thinking about how to adopt it. But if you're billing by the hour, then you're not going to be making as much money because the time it takes for you to do things is not taking as much time as it used to. And you can't just multiply your rate by the time savings, because you're going to end up with $25,000, $50,000 an hour rates. And your ethics authority is not going to look too kindly on that. And even if somebody gets something the minute after you hang up with them, they're not going to want to pay $5,000 for that based on a billable rate of a 0.1, right? So with that being said, Lauren, how should we be thinking about how we value and price our legal services to our clients?
Well, here's the good news. Our legal consumers have never actually wanted to buy our time. We have been selling them that for decades because we, as a profession, created this manufactured market where that's all that we sold. And so the consumers had to buy it. But ultimately, what they were really buying and why they would choose my firm versus another firm who does prenups is the value that I'm providing through my firm. So the great news is there's a wonderful solution to the problem. Ditching the billable hour is going to be the first start, and then implementing value-based pricing. So just shifting, what are you actually selling to the client? And the first question you have to be able to answer, no matter what business model or pricing model that you choose within that value-based umbrella, is going to be, what problem do I solve? And that is going to be similar in similar practice areas, but it's going to be the way that you're going to communicate it with your potential clients. So for me, do I write prenups? Yes, but that's not what I talk about selling to clients. I talk about selling, you have created these assets, you have accumulated them, you are now entering into this new partnership, and you want to protect those assets while also building the wealth of your partnership. So, how can we do that together? Still giving them a prenup, same document rate, same work product, but they're not going to care ultimately if it takes me 10 minutes to draft that because I've been using those AI tools that we talked about in the last couple of episodes. They're going to care that their goals of having their assets protected was what I actually delivered. So that's where the shift in cost-based pricing, which is what traditionally we've used for decades in the legal profession, where we just say, oh, well, Mathew charges $3.50 an hour, so I'm down the street from him, I guess I'll charge $3.50 an hour. We're similarly situated in our experience. Has nothing to do with the consumer or what they're actually buying. That's cost-based. To a value-based, where we start with the consumer first and we say, what problem do we solve for our clients? What value does that give them? And then what are they willing to pay for that value? We do this all the time in every other consumer-based pricing or consumer-based in every other consumer-based market that we're in, right? Why do I go to the coffee house down the street versus Starbucks? Or why do I buy Toyotas versus Lamborghinis, right? Anywhere that we are buying stuff and we are consumers, we're doing the same thing. We just, for some reason, have thought we're special as lawyers. I don't know that we haven't had to do this for decades, but the market and the tech is definitely going to push us in that direction. So I do flat fees in my practice. It makes the most sense. But I know, Mathew, you are all about subscriptions. Makes a ton of sense for cash flow and ton of sense for consumers. So how do you approach it from a subscription-based format?
Yeah, so my perspective on it is, and we kind of got into this, we were even talking about our brand episode, where you're somebody's life lawyer, right? Like, what is that? That's a thing that doesn't really exist. Well, I am trying to be someone's life lawyer, right? I just don't have the domain to it. Whether that's in their business or in their personal life, you can subscribe to an attorney and get legal advice and legal help when you need it, but also avoid big expensive legal problems. I was talking to a PR agency, which if you're the owner of a law firm and you say that on LinkedIn, you will get inbound from some PR and marketing firms that want to help you get more business, right? Well, what's interesting about the PR space and being a licensed attorney is if you're a state-based practice attorney, well, a national PR firm that helps you get national PR probably isn't going to be useful to you. So, and this guy like figured that out pretty quickly, like after having the conversation. But he didn't still try to sell me, which I was actually impressed with. One of the things we talked about on that call, though, and like because he was asking me what makes me different and like why subscribe to an attorney and what does that even mean? And he said, well, can like you help somebody with like a speeding ticket if they get a ticket? And I said, well, no, because I don't go to court for people. But by being subscribed to me, they can stay out of trouble because they'll talk to me before they do something stupid because they've already paid for it. That's one of the benefits of the subscription model is you want to maximize your subscriber benefits. It's just built in to the business model, right? And I want my subscribers to maximize their subscription benefits because then they're going to stay subscribed. And I don't try to pull any tricks, what it's called in the subscription economy, dark patterns, like gym memberships, pull a lot of dark patterns. Like you can't unsubscribe. Like they make it really hard. The FTC has rules now about click to subscribe. You must make it click to unsubscribe. And to make it easy for clients or for users to unsubscribe. So I don't pull any dark patterns because I don't like that when that's done to me, right? It's something you talk about a lot about, Lauren, is having a client-centered practice. When I launched my law firm, I didn't even have that in my lexology. Like I didn't know what client-centered mean. I just thought, well, if I was the client, like what would I want?
That's it.
And yeah, that's it. That's it. Like it's amazing that lawyers just don't put themselves into the shoes of the clients, right?
Yeah, that's a terrible joke. I mean, how many times have you heard? I hear it from divorce attorneys a lot. Like, well, I couldn't get I couldn't get divorced at this firm. It's like, that's a problem that you're working here and you could not get divorced. Presumably, right? We have doctorate degrees and we have high earning potential, and yet you're turning around saying I couldn't be a client of my own firm. I don't understand why that's not more of a red flag.
Yeah, and going back to one of the earlier things you said is like, why do lawyers bill by the hour? Well, in part because we have a monopoly on legal services. And it's in the news right now that KPMG just got approved for an alternative business structure in Arizona. So like, look out because they are coming in to disrupt the business model of legal services. And so if you're listening to this joint series, then you're already ahead of the game, but you can't be billing by the hour if you're going to want to compete in this new world. First of all, as we've already discussed, right, it's just simply not as profitable as it used to be to bill by the hour. So like if you need a profit motivation, there it is, right? You want to make more money and spend less time actually working. Like stop billing by the hour, leverage automation and AI up the wazoo, and voila, like you'll have made it. Like, yeah, sure, you got to be able to do the legal work and like understand like the underpinnings what the AI is generating and with the automations, like if you're going to help set those up, what they do. But now we can leverage these tools in ways we never could before. So something that I do though, is I do really a hybrid model, right? And like my favorite clients are the higher level subscription clients. And even at the higher levels that for what I charge, like it's still like minimum wage compared to if they were to hire a lawyer full-time in their practice, right? Like they would have to pay way more money. So it's fractional general counsel for small business owners or for people for their lives, right? And I have different price points that make sense for how often they need me and how many things I'm taking off their plate. Because at the end of the day, if you're a small business owner, and a small business owner to me is a business that just doesn't have a full-time in-house attorney, right? So all the way to solopreneurs like you and I, Lauren, all the way up to having hundreds of employees, but you still don't have a full-time in-house attorney. Like I could be the fractional general counsel for that business. And even my largest clients, they hire other lawyers to hire more specialized things. But for the day-to-day stuff, it just makes sense to outsource that to an attorney. And because my prices, ultimately, if they hire me and engage me for a full year, it really does end up being like less than minimum wage for what it would take to hire somebody full time, granted, right? And so like it's part-time, but it's still at a super reasonable cost. Whereas if you're charging by the hour, like these small businesses, they don't know how to budget for that. And like even the larger companies that I represent, like they still need to know. Like they need to be careful. Like one of the reasons they've achieved the success that they have is because they're spending wisely. And so they're being careful and they're employing a lot of people, right? And so like if they were spending, many multiples more on legal services. That's a few more people that don't have jobs possibly at these larger companies where I'm still their fractional GC. So even though it's outside the scope a little bit of like being a mission-driven firm of trying to serve those people and business owners who have been long unserved by the legal profession, to like represent some companies that have significant like a lot of money and like a lot of revenue annually, it ends up that they're able to continue to grow and to hire more people as a result of that, right? And so I still find that even for those clients, I still feel like I'm fulfilling the mission of my firm to be more accessible legal counsel. And at the same time, having high paying clients like that let me, in a way, subsidize the other work that I do to like everyday people, because you got to have some high ticket, clients sometimes to be able to continue to do that other work. But the point is of the subscription model is for whether it's those small business owners or for everyday people, they will always come to me first for their legal things. And even if I can't help them, I could probably quarterback for them or coach, for them to find other lawyers that might be able to, help them out. So I'm like the Cook County area affiliate for like Overture. So that does come to mind, but I was referring people to Overture before they like made me their local affiliate or whatever. So I don't know, like I might get like a kickback or a percentage or something. And I'm not exactly sure how that works because it's still kind of new that I've been an affiliate. But like Overture is one of those platforms where now I could go and post that referral that my client needs an attorney in such and such a place. Now I find that I'm still more in the camp of like getting referrals from the platform rather than referring people. But the nature of my model does lend itself well to that referral model, except I'm helping clients avoid even needing a specialist in the first place, like a litigator, like, some kind of other like environmental attorney or other things, by just avoiding the legal problem in the first place. Because the subscription model also lends itself to problem avoidance rather than problem solving. But that does make it a little harder, going to your earlier point of how do you price and sell your services and what's the value? They're buying the problem solved. Well, in my instance, they're buying the problem avoided, which is harder to do. But estate planning is taking your vitamins too. So like, what have you learned about pricing and explaining the value of your services for the estate planning side of things?
Yeah, you do have to know the pain point. So I think that sometimes this is something you have to, with each specific client potentially in your target market, get to the numbers for them. So even with you, Matthew, right? Like you were saying that you are a fractional GC. So if a company came along, maybe they aren't sure. So these are nice numbers to have in your back pocket. But to say, hey, if you're going to hire a run of the mill attorney on your payroll, that's probably going to run you right maybe 100 to 150K per year, plus maybe benefits, right? Whatever you offer. And so then being able to have a hard number to say, but my services are X, right? They're a fraction of that. And you're going to get a lot of the same benefits. Even those highly revenue generating companies, they've got a budget, right? And I loved your point of, well, if you don't have an in-house counsel, that then frees up those funds to be able to hire somebody who is directly generating more revenue for your business. Like it just makes business sense. It's a lot, I think, easier sometimes in the business setting. On the estate planning side and on any sort of consumer facing side, I tend to, when I have somebody who's potentially on the fence, is talk about what they are avoiding, not only what you're protecting when it comes to estate planning or prenups or even tax debt resolution, right? There's something that you don't want somebody taking away from you, but talking about the potential litigation costs. So this can be in the employment space, right? Just HR issues, right? Employee issues. Folks don't realize how much is it going to cost if I get sued about this? Or how much is it going to cost my family if I pass away and I don't have a plan in place that's organized, that's clear? If I have folks fighting over stuff, I can really sit down and go, listen, ultimately the money's going to come out of your estate. So if you have $1 million to give away and then your family spends 50,000 of it fighting with each other because you didn't have a good will in place, right? That just means they're going to pull that potentially out of the estate. So really putting sometimes hard concrete numbers on things. But if you're in a space where it's not as clear, I think thinking about any future litigation, which folks understand it's complicated, understand it costs a lot of money, but sometimes they still don't know. Legal pricing is still so opaque that if you can tell them, well, the average divorce in Colorado without kids costs $15,000 to $25,000 per party, then it makes it real easy to go, hey, do you want to avoid that? Because that's just coming out of your retirement ultimately. Do you want to do it in an uncontested, amicable way for, 5 grand? Makes a lot more sense. So really sometimes putting numbers on that value that they are saving can really make your services just a no-brainer. And they go, yeah, where do I sign up?
Yeah, yeah. Another really important thing when figuring out what your fee is going to be, in particular when it's fixed, and subscription is just a recurring fixed fee. And so I really like the subscription economy jargon. So like subscriber benefits, right? Like what are your subscriber benefits? Well, that's another way to say, what's the scope of your legal services for that fixed monthly rate? And if you're just doing a one-time fixed price, which I still do those, I just make my clients subscribe first, right? So I take the Costco approach to my legal services. First, you must become a subscriber. Now you get access to all the deals. And so by getting access to all the deals, I get that work instead of some other lawyers getting that work. But at the end of the day, they never wanted to hire those lawyers anyway because they don't know how much it's going to cost. And so I just get that first, right? Because they're subscribed to me. That's why I charge like almost half of what the next lawyer will charge for a residential real estate closing, because I know I could also help them with their simple estate plan. Because let's be real, they're just buying their first starter home. They have a simple estate, right? When they're ready for more advanced estate planning, I could make some referrals to some estate planning attorneys. And frankly, my clients are price sensitive. I don't even necessarily want a referral fee. I made my money from them. Like, let's keep their costs low and let the other lawyer keep all of their fee. And you don't hear that a lot in the legal profession. So the subscription model just lends itself to, I think, doing better business. So for me, though, the scope is they get access to schedule 15-minute calls at a time. And the amount of calls available depends on their subscription level. So if they're only paying $20 a month, well, they're only getting me at the end of my day. If they want to pay $100 a month or more, then they get me whenever I'm available to schedule those 15-minute calls. For the bigger clients, I actually have custom links for them because they might need more time. They might need to throw 30 minutes on my calendar. So they get a unique custom link that they could throw 30 minutes on my calendar for the bigger clients, right? That's one of the ways that I rationalize and explain to them why they're paying more, is because they could actually put more time on my calendar, right? I don't limit the amount of time that they could actually schedule those calls. Well, you could do that. Calendly lets you do that, right? You could have a unique link for every client where they're capped at, you could use this link 5 times a month. Really easy to automate these days. But I wouldn't recommend you do that, because then what your client's going to do is they're going to hoard those 5 uses or whatever and not use them and wait until the end of the subscription period, 30 days, a quarter, half a year, whatever. And then they're not using it and not calling you. And so by having unlimited communications, your clients will call you, but you make them schedule the time with you. And even if you disagree with everything Lauren and I are talking about ditching the billable hour and switching over to fixed fee, again, subscription is recurring fixed fee, you should be doing that anyway with your clients. Like, make them schedule time with you. Even if you want to employ someone who picks up your phones or an answering service, all they should be doing is getting a time on your calendar using one of these scheduling tools. So that's what my clients get access to schedule time on my calendar. They also get access to my other fixed fee pricing or subscription add-ons, right? And the subscription add-ons and the fixed fee pricing change based on if you're a $20 a month subscriber or a $100 a month subscriber, because certain things like buying or selling your business are going to require we're able to communicate more frequently. So I only offer that to the premier subscribers, the $100 a month subscribers, as a subscription add-on for at least right now, $800 a month, right? So like for $900 a month, I will help you buy or sell your business. And I know that that's going to take 2 to 3 months at a minimum. So I know what I'm going to make. And if a client were to call me and they were to say, I need to close in the next 30 days, I would say, well, my normal pricing isn't appropriate for that. And so what you're seeing advertised on the website is really assuming we have standard non-rush closing time to close. And they understand, right? If they need a rush job, I don't necessarily, it doesn't happen a lot, because all my clients I need all the time in the world to be able to ease into and schedule and plan for the work that I'm going to be doing. Just like with this podcast that you and I are doing, Lauren, we're recording in advance so we could have a bunch of episodes ready and schedule them so we could focus on our actual legal work in our practice and building out our practice. I try to do the same thing with my clients. And so sometimes I may have a client and this happens more in the freelancer solopreneur space, where they're like, well, I just need this contract, or I just need this, a handful of things done. I want to subscribe at your, freelancer level and give you a bunch of things and then unsubscribe right away. Well, if they tell me that, I'm going to say, well, it's really more appropriate for you to subscribe at even just $20 a month and pay the $50 per page pricing on those agreements. Because let's be real, you're not going to stick around, and that's okay. And while I don't lock people in for more than a month at a time, that level is really contemplating that you're going to be around, and I'm just going to continue to help you, so you, the business owner, don't have to worry about legal things anymore. But if you want to keep worrying about legal things, you just don't want to worry about these 3 or 4 things, I'll charge you $50 a page, and it's still going to be cheaper than any other lawyer who's working on it, right? So like defining the scope, they get access to scheduled calls, they get access to special pricing, they get access to other things, right? Like that's what they're getting for the subscription. And then for the higher level subscribers, we stop counting pages, we just count projects, and you get a certain amount of projects a month. You may or may not get negotiations included in that, depending on if I need to represent you in conversations with another party or not, or whether that be a dispute or a transaction or what have you. Like that's an additional subscription add-on where you could bundle that all together if you're anticipating that. I even have custom subscriptions where I know somebody's going to buy or sell at least 1 or 2 businesses a year, in addition to the GC work that I'm doing for them. So they have custom pricing you wouldn't even see on my website. That's appropriate for their level because I've been with them. They've been with me for a while. But properly defining the scope is something you really need to do. And that's how I do it using subscriptions. And it's not like I could patent this. I mean, I don't know, maybe I can. I'm not a patent attorney. But I think you can patent certain business processes. But like the $50 per page pricing, so many projects a month for the higher ticket subscribers, or that's all we count, or how many projects I'm working on. And if you go over that, it's $50 a page. I've not seen anybody else doing that. That's on the table. That's available. Like I can't protect other lawyers from doing that. I'm telling you, I've been doing it for 3 years now. It works.
It really works. And the 2 biggest issues and problems I see attorneys run into are they do not set expectations, and then they blame value-based pricing. They don't set a scope clearly, or they don't talk about communication is a really big one. They're not clearly saying, you can call me anytime, but you have to schedule it ahead of time. And they're in 15 or 30-minute increments. I think attorneys assume if I tell my clients, well, they just have unlimited communication, they're just going to call me every single minute of every single day, and I'm going to be at their beck and call. Well, I do unlimited communication, and I've never had a client abuse it because they have to schedule. I completely agree with you, Matthew, right? They've got to schedule it ahead of time, not just sitting there waiting for them. And when they schedule it, it tells them the duration. And 95% of my clients, unless they're just totally into what they're saying and aren't paying attention, will self-regulate. They'll go, oh, we had only had 20 minutes. We're 15 minutes in. Let me get this last question in. So they're really appreciative and respectful of my time. They're not trying to take advantage of it. But I set that from the beginning. That's in every engagement agreement. So what is the scope? What does communication look like? How is it going to be that we're going to work together? I think when you don't do that and you just throw some price against the wall and the client has a different idea of what's included, then you run into this tension. And then folks will say, oh, see, it's value-based pricing. I should just go back to the billable hour. But that's just attorneys not doing their job, quite frankly. We just want to put all of the onus on the client and say, whatever you need, we're just going to bill you, versus saying, no, we're the expert. We know what's involved. We know how long this takes. These are the different levels that you have that you can choose from based on your needs. And we're going to meet those needs and deliver the value. So not setting expectations. And then the second part that dovetails from that, the second mistake is attorneys don't want to do the work in identifying the variables. And this goes to scope a bit, right? To be able to define the scope, you have to then say what's not included. So for your example, right, I'm going to help you buy and sell 1 business. And I'm sure it says that, right, in your engagement agreements. Or, if you have an additional one, it's an additional cost. And attorneys just don't want to sit down, even though we know we issue spot for a living, but for some reason don't want to sit down and say, these are all the things that could happen that are not included, and they're going to be extra and be upfront about them. Again, never had a client push back on me. I don't know, Matthew, if that's been your experience, but when they know it from the beginning, they don't have an issue with it. They get it. But when those 2 things don't happen, it's very easy to blame value-based pricing, but really that's not the issue. And when those 2 things happen well, I mean, sky's the limit, and profit margins are off the charts because you're delivering value. You're likely over delivering value, and the client knows what to expect.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, believe it or not, like I don't even specify 1 or 2 businesses being sold a year. I just have so many projects a month. But the way that my projects work are that it carries over month to month. So if you have 3 projects a month and we're doing a closing for a transaction, you're buying or selling your business, that continues to count against your project limit month to month. So you don't get a brand new 3 projects every month. You get 3 projects per month, and projects that go for multiple months always continue to count against your limit. And so that's how I define it, because I still try to think you want it to be as simple as possible, right? Like super simple and applicable broadly. And how is a project defined? It's defined, you know, clearly for me as, drafting something, writing something, reviewing something, letters, contracts, research. Like each one of those things individually is considered a project, right? Now, if I'm analyzing and drafting and reviewing a contract, that's one project, right? And there are some things where it's like, well, what if it's like a project with like a million exhibits attached to it? It's like a contract and it's got like, exhibits A through G. It's like 1,000 pages, right? Well, I said about, like you said, having a conversation with the client. I know we're just sort of attaching these on and calling them like exhibits, but like a statement of work is its own totally separate project from the master services agreement. Even though they're related, they're a different contract. Whether you try to attach it as an amendment or an exhibit or what have you, and you just got to explain that to your clients that like that's it's a lot of other work that we are going to have to do on this other document. And sure, it's a shorter document, but we don't. One of the values of a pure subscription where we don't count pages, some projects will be longer, some projects will be shorter. The truly longer, more time arduous ones will go over multiple months, probably. And so that's how my business model works out. I don't do the thing where, it's like, well, look, I don't track time at all. It's like, oh, that took me a lot of time. I lost money on that. No, because I'm thinking about lifetime value, right? I'm thinking, yeah, sure, that project may have taken a little bit longer. Even if I'm not tracking my time, I could sort of figure that out pretty easily. Um, but but this client, because they got great service, is going to stay subscribed. And so I'll end up making way more from this client than if I just tried to maximize value in that little, like that little tiny, one sort of transaction. In like this one instance, I try to maximize value. I lose out on all future value from that client that I could provide them and that they could pay me for. So, that's another way to think about this is how you scope your services and how you think about the value that you price is the value like immediate? Is it long term? Is there a combination? Because there's also something to be said, and I think of what's his name? Longtime listeners will know that I've had a lot of guests on podcast Law Subscribe, but one of them talked about how what you could do is you could figure out with a client. This is what if he does. He helps lawyers do this. Say, well, here's options A, B, and C, right? How fast do you need this work done? And if you need it done, the fastest, that's going to cost the most. And it gives your client a chance for them to pick the value that they want, to pick the speed, to pick the turnaround. Because almost always it's more valuable for your client to get things faster. And when you make money, when things take longer, there's an inherent conflict there. So by switching over to fixed fee or subscription pricing or a combination like I do, that helps you avoid that conflict and really align incentives between you and your client.
Yeah, I don't think attorneys think about that the billable hour is an inherent conflict. We look for conflicts in other places in our firms, particularly with parties. But yes, when you have an incentive to bill longer, to spend more time, to think of everything under the sun that you could possibly do in this litigation case, that is not what the client wants. And if you think about an airlines, right, when we go book a flight, it's the same length of time. Like from here to Chicago is the same length of time. I would be annoyed if I had to pay more because the pilot took like some out route and, went all the way up to Canada to then come back down. But when you go on to buy a ticket, there are often multiple levels of service, right? You can sit in economy and you know what you're going to get, or you can sit in business class, or you can sit in first class. And so it's just like that is what is most important to your client. Is it a rush issue? Is it an urgency? It might take you the same amount of time to draft the document, but you're getting it to them faster. So they should pay for that, just like we pay for that in all other aspects of being a consumer. And what I wanted to say that you were talking about in terms of like the business argument for this is, I think that one of the other issues or detriments the billable hour has had, and there's a laundry list of them, not only wreaking havoc on our well-being and thinking of life in 6-minute increments, but it also has put us sort of against each other in the sense of there's this like more hedonistic approach to our business is. Like, well, I charge 350 this year, I got to charge 400 next year. They keep going up, right? And there's this constant more where we're never quite satisfied. And I always think, to your example, Matthew, like, yeah, maybe I lost a little bit of money if I look at the time I spent on this one particular case. But what I look at it is, I want to make X number of dollars this year. And I would like to do that in the least amount of time. Like, if I could do that working part time, which is what I do, wonderful. So if I hit that, and on one case, maybe I spent a little bit more time, like, we have such a warped perspective and we're focusing on the wrong thing. Like, who cares if it took you a couple more hours on one client versus another if you hit your revenue goals and you were able to take vacations and work part-time or do whatever else you wanted. So I think that when we focus so much on time, we also lose that perspective of like, what's enough? And if you hit that, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that successful? Who cares?
I mean, so true, right? And you hear all these, and I listen to a lot of these legal podcasts, and we've talked about them, and I hear from gurus in the business, legal, and marketing and biz dev space, and they're like, yeah, you become $1 million law firm and like do all these things, and it's like you don't actually need to do that to be happy, right? Like, but you do have to set some goals as a law firm owner, in particular as a solo, and be like, okay, like I know what my expenses are, like I know what my operating expenses are, I know what I want to pay myself, and maybe then I have also some stretch goals for bringing in some like total revenue to the firm for that year. And yeah, sure, like maybe you want to grow a little bit too, right? And like having those goals in place can help you identify how many clients you need at the prices that you've set. And if you do want to track your time because you're moving from billable hours, like I just burned the boats and I just stopped tracking time and I went right into this model and I made adjustments. I didn't come to $50 a page right away as something that worked. And I see in our like show notes planning doc here that we have, you said test the market. It was one of your notes, Lauren. And like, that's what I did. Like I tested the market. Like what would people pay per page where I still feel like it's valuable for them and I'm making money. And I started out at $100 and like nobody bought per page because it was too much. And so then then I was like, well, every fifth page is like a free page. And I'm like, this is starting to get too complicated. Like what's the
Very
lowest?
creative, though. Very creative. I'll give you that.
I know. So I was like, what's the simplest thing that's the lowest I could go? Where it's just $50 a page. And I was like, I'm going to just try it out and see. And all of a sudden I was making thousands of dollars on the per page pricing because that just made sense. It was a little easier for people to wrap their heads around at that price, right? So like I tested the market and I made mistakes with pricing, and you just got to learn from it and not be afraid, because at the end of the day, if you're controlling your expenses, if you have your client avatars in place and you're targeting those markets and you know what your goals are, you know what you want to pay yourself, you know what you want to make for the year, then you could sort of say, well, I need X amount of subscribers, or I need so many clients to sell an estate plan to, or whatever the fee is, right? So like that helps you realize that goal, which is a reason why maybe you shouldn't have as complicated of a pricing structure as I have, because it's harder to project when you have so many variables to your pricing. Though I do still think on the selling your services to client side, having unbundled all of your legal services and all of the value you can provide that's not even legal, but legal adjacent. Like I'll act as registered agent for my clients. Some lawyers give that away for free. Well, I charge another $20 a month for it. Or if you're a certain level subscriber, that's just included as a bundled in add-on to that higher level subscription. I will be your registered agent, right? So like, that's not like, there are companies that do that are not law firms. But it does kind of make sense for your lawyer to do that for you, because if you receive notice of something legal related, your lawyer's going to want to know about that, right? So it just cuts out the middle person in that instance. So things like that, like completely unbundling your legal services, assigning a fixed or recurring rate for what that is, clearly defining the scope of what they're getting and the value, and explaining that. And hey, by the way, like shout outs to our last episode. If you don't know how to define this, leverage AI to help you define it, right? And you'll be amazed at what you could get from that. You could certainly hire experts, and Lauren and I do help lawyers with this thing, but AI could be a first starting point too. And if you don't like what what the AI gives you, then look to me and Lauren, and we'll certainly help you out. But that's just something that, don't let it hold you back. If you are tracking time, the goal is, when you're pivoting, is things take less time. Wow, it took me an hour to prepare that estate plan for that client. How could I make it take a half hour? How could I make it take 10 minutes? How could I just automate it? And maybe that's a totally different product that I could just sell versus the hands-on estate plan. And now I've got two different products for two different markets, but it's the same type of work for me no matter what. And people that want a white glove service, maybe they're willing to pay for that white glove service, but I could still serve all these people that they don't need it. And there are pitfalls to that, because like I offer like low touch, simple estate plans. And I had one client who hired me for it, and she wanted like white glove service. I was like, this is a low touch. You hired me and you tried to negotiate on my low pricing for my simple estate plan. You do not get white glove service with this. Like every other law firm could do that. Like if that's what you want, it's not a good fit. But if you're trying to save money, this is what you get. The documents you're going to get are going to be the exact same though, because we're all getting them from the same places through the Illinois Institute of Continuing Legal Education that we're adding our own things to. But 90 to 95% of your simple estate plan with me is going to be the same as your simple estate plan with any other lawyer. Like there's very little add-on we could do. I just got rid of all the extra stuff over it. That's why I'm able to charge $400, to my subscribers for a super simple estate plan. All the fluff has been taken out, and I spend the least amount of time as possible on that, right? But if you're just in the estate planning space, so it's a good place to focus, then you could have those like low touch, high touch, tiered pricing for different clients.
Yeah, I think that good, better, best approach when you can make it work really makes sense for value-based pricing and just different levels of service. I mean, I thought of, as you were sharing that a woman who wanted to have the cheapest price, but the most service is like, she walked up to Southwest and was like, I bought an economy, but I'm going to sit in first class, right? And get all of the first class benefits. And Southwest would go, I don't think so. That's not what you paid for, right? If you want to get from point A to point B, we got a way for you to do that in the least expensive, most affordable way possible. But if you can break down your services for your target market into that sort of good, better, best approach, that's going to help clients oftentimes self-select. And it also, just because of the nature of how our brains work, is going to keep them focused on your firm. Whereas if you only offer one service, consumers often want to make sure that they're choosing the right service for them. So they like to compare. And if you just offer one, well, then they're going to go, well, Lauren just offers this one. Let me go see what, Sally down the street offers. And she offers, well, actually, Sally looks, and now I've lost a customer. Whereas if I could give them, here are the 3 tiers based on how much white glove service you want, based on your rush, whatever the factors are, those variables, they're going to stick with me and pick one of my 3 services versus going to somebody else. So there's a lot of business benefits of it in addition to all the profits that you can incorporate, but you're going to capture those clients who want to work with you and keep them there and have them choose a service that works best for them. I will also say, if anyone wants my framework that we've worked on and we've put down on paper, you can also get that for free as another resource at thepricingtoolkit.com. It was in conjunction with the Chicago Bar Foundation. We are looking to update it. So depending on when this comes out, grab the copy now, but stay tuned for a new and improved version, just continuing to build on what we've learned for value-based pricing. But there are resources now out there. I threw spaghetti against the wall when it came to pricing when I first started, but tried to share what works and what doesn't work and a framework that you can actually go through so that you are not losing money and hopefully starting out even profitable from the beginning.
The last thing that I do hear sometimes, Lauren, is folks say, well, my rules of professional conduct don't allow it. So I'll say, well, when's the last time you actually read your rules of professional conduct on fees? Because Illinois updated ours as recently as July of 2023. And we explicitly say, if you take it, you could charge a fixed fee and it could skip the IOLTA and go right into your operating account. You just have to refund the money if you don't do the work, right? And I think that's a pretty fair trade-off and an incentive that lawyers actually charge fixed fees for their services. And I like, that's where I fall under. Like there is like a true retainer part of our section on fees, but it's a little bit like unclear. And even though my subscription model kind of seems like maybe a more traditional retainer, I voluntarily choose for it to be a recurring fixed fee to fall under that exact part of my attorney ethics. So actually read the rules applicable to your jurisdiction before just making assumptions that, well, you read it 10, 20 years ago and it didn't allow for fixed fees or subscriptions, because you might be surprised. Because when I've helped some lawyers launch a subscription practice, that's like, they were surprised to find, like, one of the very first things we do is we find the applicable rules for their code of professional conduct or equivalent. And like, we find, oh yeah, it is permitted. The takeaway that I'll give is my engagement agreement is on my website, subscriptionattorney.com/#engagement. And yeah, I do have some amendments to it specific for certain sort of situations that I only leverage sometimes when they're like, if I'm representing, spouse and spouse on something and we need to sign a conflicts waiver. So I have certain things that I amend it from time to time, but that's out there. It's out there really for clients. It just so happens that other lawyers may want to be able to adapt it to their particular jurisdiction. Again, I'm only licensed in Illinois. So with that, I mean, I don't know, this is kind of like in between. It could be a two-parter, but maybe it's just going to be a long one-parter. That's the last thing I'll say that I haven't already said about how we charge and how we price our legal services, Lauren. Anything else? Any final takeaways?
I would say if you want to be a business that collects every penny of revenue that you deserve for the work that you've done, you've got to do value-based pricing. Colorado does require us, even for my flat fees, to put it in trust before it is earned. So it's a little bit different than Illinois. But regardless of what your trust requirements are, I collect every single penny upfront. I do not do any work before the client has paid me for it. So if you would like to stop discounting invoices or spending hours a month chasing clients for money or spending hours a month doing invoicing and time records and all that, value-based pricing will let you do that in an instant and make sure that you have 100% collection rate.
Who doesn't want that?
I mean, that sells it for me.
So next episode, we'll be talking about a little bit more about firm finances. We've only sort of scratched the surface with that in some earlier episodes. So we'll be deep diving more on that, and also get into a little bit more about our personal finances and what it means to be a small business owner and have to deal with those things too. So what we're doing there. So while we did talk a little bit about how we've paid ourselves, we're also going to get into more about how, like, the interface between law firm finances and personal finances. So learn more all about that on the next episode.
You did good for being sick. That was awesome. You made it.
All right, we made it. And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Make someone's day by sharing this episode with them. The best way to get in touch is to follow and message me on LinkedIn. To get extra content, subscribe to the newsletter at www.lawsubscribe.com, where you can also become a paid subscriber to get episodes and content early. Until next time, this is Mathew Kerbis with Law Subscribed.